Hello everyone and welcome to the King of the Hill Sealed show match. I am Raven and casting this match with me today is going to be the one and only Orange. How are you doing today?
Hello everyone. Yeah, I'm doing great today. I've just been playing Overwatch for the past 5 hours, so I'm pretty excited to get to custom Hearthstone down to
Even in the
Hearthstone now
Overwatch jacket as
switching.
well.
So, oh yeah, clearly
I
you
do have
can't
one as
play
well, so it's
Overwatch
fine.
without an Overwatch jacket, right?
Exactly. So this is going to be a series that is basically going to be winner stays on. It's going to be a best of five conquest format, and we'll explain why conquest soon, because conquest is not the most favored format in the world, but it's also going to be sealed, which is something a little bit different than we're really used to. So, Orange, do you want to explain what the sealed format is
Oh,
to the
oh
viewers?
yeah, I'd love to. So, sealed is something that is used in a similar card game, Magic the Gathering, and in several other card games too. But that's the one closest to me, so I'll use that as an example. It's where you get a limited amount of cards prior when you start the tournament or the match. In this case, you get a certain amount of booster packs that you then build, in this case, three decks from,
Hmm.
and then you play with only these cards. So you have to. It doesn't matter what cards you already own or so, but rather what you can do with a whole new card pool, pretty much.
Yeah, and the idea
Uh,
as well is because this is Hearthstone, and all the cards are virtual. They're opening virtual packs with the Tempo Storm tool, which is fantastic. But just to reiterate as well, when they are building decks, if across all of your packs you open two knife jugglers, you can only have two knife jugglers across all three decks. So you cannot put two in every single one of your decks. Once you've used the card in a deck once, it is used. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. And I think this format really encourages or at least displays deck building skill because this is
oh yeah.
Conquest. And this is the reason for Conquest. You have to win with every deck because if it was something like Last Hero Standing, then you would just put all the best cards into one deck and try and 3-0. I imagine that would probably be the strategy, right, Orange?
Yeah, you have to get very, very creative when it comes to steel. You have to look at cards that maybe you haven't really looked at before, and see like what use can I make of this, because you won't have like 90 perfect playable cards in your card pool. So you will have to like scramble and look for new interesting synergies and stuff like that whenever you build your deck. It's really, really interesting. Me and my playtesting group love playing steel matches versus each other, where we like bet an amount of money just because it's like so fun, and you really have to get creative.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be really cool. And to introduce the players as well, the first two players of this is going to be Powder from SK, who I believe you playtest with quite a lot anyway.
Oh
And
yeah.
also it's going to be versus Ekop. Both these players, because I've played a bit of Sealed in the past myself as well. Both these guys, yourself, I think most of the SK guys especially, really have played a good chunk of Sealed in the past. But
Yeah.
what's going to be interesting is I don't know how much everyone has played since Whispers of the Old Gods and now Karazhan has come out because every single expansion is used in the sealed tool. So we're going to see cards from Naxxramas, cards from GVG. We might see Doctor Boom return, and this is what makes it really cool because although standard is a fantastic format, now we get to see maybe just like splashes of the old cards as opposed to full deck with Boom, two Belchers, so on. We're going to see just hints of them overall. Do you think like this because there's so many expansions? In the possible set now, that the synergy is going to be quite difficult to actually get within decks.
It's definitely gonna be harder. I remember that when I was playing Seal before Whisper of the Old Gods had come out, I felt like my decks were most of the time very synergy reliant. So I actually don't think it's gonna be that hard. I still think it's gonna be like a pretty good amount of synergy within the decks, even though we have two sets added since. So I'm not too afraid that the decks are gonna lack synergy. It's in Sealed, you can't really go on just raw card power as much.
Yeah, it's definitely like a mix between. It's like the middle point between arena and constructed, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's right just down the middle of. You can actually control decks, and you've got a big pool to choose from. but you also have to just work with what you've got, which is pretty difficult. But we won't wait any longer. What we're going to do is actually we're going to view the drafts as each player has done it. So they're going to see the pack openings and going to see what decks they've ended up making, and then we'll get into the game itself. So we'll start with Ekop's draft first, as we start it up now, and we will see how that goes overall. Yeah, as we can see now, the players do have a time limit with this tool, so they have 30 minutes to build, their 3 decks and confirm them. And I believe, I've not actually tried it, but I do believe if you don't do it within 30 minutes, your decks just stop. Like, it just ends, and then you have to play with whatever you've built, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, they do. I've run out of time several times. I'm a very slow deck builder when it comes to sealed, so it has not only happened once, but several times that I've run out of time.
Nice. So already now we see Ekop starting with Druid and just picking out probably just as you said earlier, like the key sort of powerful class cards that can go in there. He has 2 Druids of the Claw, which is pretty nice.
And 2 swipe.
Yeah.
Cards like Starfire also become like MVPs in these sorts of formats. So I would say that his Druid is looking really strong just from what you can tell from the class cards. But he lacks the innervates, he doesn't have wild growth. So it would have to be like some slow and not as explosive Druid deck if you were to go with it.
Yeah, it looks like you'd have to go for more of just an early, almost like a sort of Beast Druid style of just playing good minions on the board and being quite aggressive. Because even then it looked like, even though he had the Lumber, I think, in the deck, it looked like he was curving out realistically at Druid of the Claw.
Probably some sort of like a little bit bigger Druid deck that just tries to curve out like Secret Paladin style.
Yeah.
When it comes to Hunter, it's not looking too strong. He has double web spinner, he has an eagle horn bow, but other than that, the card quality falls off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think Hunter as well is kind of a tough one sometimes. Unless you can... The decks I've found quite success with in Sealed is like Face Hunter, if you just have enough aggro, because the hero power itself just lends itself to that style. And you can punish like almost any deck because you can just be too fast for it. But the only problem with that is you normally have to really, invest all your early minions and fast minions into one deck, which then removes them for potential from your other decks. So it can be a bit of a problem, but as you said, nothing too crazy sticking out from Hunter. He did just throw all the Mage cards in, but I didn't really notice anything too great in Mage either.
No, as I said, it was the early Mage cards are looking strong, but since then he didn't really pick up anything too powerful in Mage. One thing I like about your theory of Hunter is also that if you put all the aggressive cards in the Hunter deck, like usually no other class really wants those type of cards, but you can use like your better mid-range or control cards for your 2 other decks. So that is also something that speaks for building like an aggressive face Hunter deck if he were to choose so.
Yeah, I mean, you look at cards like Leponome, right? Like, you're not just going to randomly put Leponome in a deck just because, whereas in Hunter, even though it's nerfed, it's going to get some work done. We see you onto Paladin, though, and this is the one we were kind of excited about.
And boy, is this looking strong. Double Meanabot, double Blessing of Kings, double Murloc Knight, double Dragon Consort. Ivory Knight is a new one that seems to be great in Seal too. Paladin is just looking insanely strong for Ekop. He's a little bit sad that he doesn't have any Consecration or any True Silver Champion, but his minions and with a double Dragon Consort, and we also saw it open on Nixie and Alexstrasza. I'm pretty sure that Paladin is gonna be probably Ekop's strongest deck if I were to call it right now.
Yeah, it looks really strong, and although I completely agree the no Consecrate hurts, but when your minions are just on curve better than everyone else's, you can kind of just keep the board down because of that, right?
Exactly. You definitely don't need a removal as much then. Priests, he got the Resurrects and he got the Onyx Bishops. Maybe there's something you can do with that, but doesn't look too promising. Oh yeah, he... as we could see.
Wow, as if Priest is bad in Seal. Well, the thing is as well, like, in all seriousness, all the jokes going around about Priest at the moment, Priest can actually be good in Sealed. It just depends what you open, right? But we saw there nothing too great from Priest, so Ekop already decided that's not going to be one of his decks, and moving on to the Rogue now.
the good priest decks are like almost unbeatable. They are insanely good, but it's like either it's an insanely good priest deck or it's just strict unplayable.
Yeah.
Here comes Shaman next.
Yeah,
Some pretty powerful cards so far. Fire Elemental, of course. If any arena players watching this, it's as powerful here in Sealed. Just one of the absolute best cards.
I'm wondering how he's not. There we go. I was like, Ekop, there's a totem golem there. You should put it in. I've heard it's pretty good.
It's a decent card. It gives me nightmares to this day from playing against it on ladder. I think that Renee Totem Karma is a great card too. That you should definitely include.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that actually. Just like Ekop kind of ignoring it at the moment. Obviously, he's got plenty of time to tinker, and it looks like he might drop it in now. Like, I think that card's super strong. He's even put in the Rumbling Elementals as well.
I like it. Rumbling Elementals is a card that I think are kind of underrated. The body at 2/6 for 4 is like it won't die in like a turn or two just like that if you curve out with it, and the effect is really powerful. It's a card that I love using in formats like this.
Yeah, it's really difficult to deal with, as you said. But now we're on to Warlock, and it half looks good because you know what I mean. Like there's good AOE, there's good demon synergy, but there's nothing too great. Like no Imp Gang Boss, for example. Like I feel really hurts because that's just almost always one of the better cards to deal with in this kind of format as well.
I just feel like there are two different decks in like that. He had like some good aggressive minions for Warlock, and he had some good control cards for Warlock, and you can't really play them together, and there weren't enough cards just with like one of them. Okay. Go over to Warrior. Double Fierce Monkey is really good. Fool's Bane should be insanely strong in this format. And I would guess that Ironforge Portal isn't too bad either. We see with double Ancient Shieldbearer that are probably pretty hard to make them work in this sort of format.
Yeah, but the good thing is though, because I mean we've not actually, you know, we didn't really, because the speed in which the cards open, we don't exactly know all the neutrals, for example. But if there's even like 4 Cthulhu minions available, do you think it would be worth just for the sheer power of the minion itself?
Probably. You can do worse than a 7 mana 6/6 in this format, especially in a class like Warrior, where you kind of want to go for the longer game. Yeah. So if you see enough Cthulhu minions, I could absolutely see using a Shield Bearer or 2. But the thing with the Warrior is that you want to just have as many weapons as possible in that class. And we didn't see Ekop open very many weapons. We saw like a King's Defender and one more weapon. And a Fool's Bane, which is...
Yeah, I think there was an Ogre Warmaul as well. But that's very unreliable.
Ogre Warmaul, as good as weapons are, Ogre Warmaul is stretching it at 50% chance. Not really what you're looking for.
Yeah, something to note as well, just for the... just if people have noticed or not, is that if you get 3 of a class card, the 3rd one is wasted. So that's something you kind of want to avoid at all possible options, because then you've kind of just opened less cards to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because you can't use more than 2 in a deck, so it's kind of rough if there's any 3-ofs available. I know we saw a couple earlier in some of the decks. Looks like Hunter's now going to bite the dust, as Ekop's decided that definitely isn't strong enough. He's done all the classes now, and then he throws Warrior. He's probably going to throw Warlock as well. I think Paladin's a definite at this point. Druid looked pretty reasonable, and even Shaman. I think Paladin and Shaman are like number 1 and 2 here for me.
If I were to guess right now, I would go with it's probably going to be Druid, Paladin, and Shaman, because Paladin and Druid are kind of similar and will fight a little bit for the same neutral cards. They both need the same type of cards to work, and then you can like use the Shaman as a more aggressive type of deck, as you said when you were talking about the Face Hunter. Maybe you can do a little bit more aggressive Shaman deck in that sort of style, so it doesn't have to fight for the same neutral cards that Paladin and Druid wants, or possibly a Mage deck. But I'd like the Shaman cards that they opened a bit more.
Yep. So here now we get to See, Ekop search for something is there is a search function in this builder, as you can see a lot of the keywords on the left that you can really narrow down the set with. But luckily for us, he's put his camera in the way, so we're not sure exactly what he searched. It looks like I don't know, what is it? Battle Cry he searched for the Shaman, I think.
Yeah. We saw him got Bran with the double rumbling elemental, so there's probably a deck in there. Here he's searching for the dragons for the paladin deck, I assume.
Yeah, I mean the rumbling elementals as well. I feel like even if you get like one Bran combo off in that deck, it's probably enough to swing a game.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to. Your whole deck doesn't have to be synergistic. You can just have like a couple of synergies thrown in here and there, so you don't have to like build your whole deck around the Battlecry theme. But then in a game, if you get like Rumbling Elemental and play 2 Battlecry minions, that is definitely enough to win a game. Sometimes on its own.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna see cards like Zubot and stuff come into this Paladin deck of Ekop.
I really like it. He has the double Murloc Knight, which is just like Murlocs he's really happy to play anyway. And these cards, the Murloc Dragon
And Beast.
Beast cards, if they just go off on one minion, it's not too shabby. This is what I'm talking about, just the small synergies within the deck. And there's no other deck that would want to use those type of cards anyway. Well, except maybe the Druid, but I think it's better suited in the Paladin deck. So I really like the inclusion of those in the Paladin deck that is building so far.
Yeah, I think when you have like 2 out of the 3 tribes, so to speak, of like, the Paladins rocking Murlocs and Dragons, then like any buff or card draw like that would be like pretty insane. Because I think the thing I've noticed most about Sealed is it's similar to Arena to a certain aspect, in the fact that I feel like if you get ahead just one turn, it's normally very difficult for your opponent to actually come back, because you've not built a consistent deck with consistent answers to your board or anything your opponent does. So getting, like as you said, just one of these synergies off once or twice could just snowball the game.
Yeah, you really don't get to decide which answers you can play in your deck, but it's all determined by your pool. So threats are answers are better, but threats are more common in this sort of format, which means that like your powerful minions stick a lot more than they usually do. That's also one thing I like about this Shaman deck of Ekops, is that they get lots of removal in the double Crackle, double Stormcrack, and a Hex.
Yeah,
And even more, a Bolt, an Axe, Power Mace, Fire Elemental, even the Rumbling Elementals can just act as removal. I really like the look of the Shaman cards. I think they might be more powerful than they look like at first glance.
Yeah, and Ekop's actually just searched for Battlecry now, just to see what he can get done in this deck and what's going to synergize. And you know what? His options don't look too bad. There are a lot of pretty nice minions available. He unlocked Justicare, which is pretty cool. I mean, do you put Kraken in this deck because I feel like the deck's got so much removal it can go late, but there isn't much late game itself apart from, say, the Rumbling Elementals if they get going, or the Fire Elemental. But if you put a Kraken in the deck, suddenly you've still got the Battlecry synergy if it goes off, but also Kraken's actually just a super good minion in a format like this.
Yeah. Kraken is an insane card in this sort of format. I don't know if it's best suited in the Shaman deck. I think both his Druid deck and his Paladin deck would want something like the Nosy Kraken. I mean, it's a 9-mana minion, so it's not the best synergizing minion with Rumbling Elementals. You probably don't care too much about your 2 extra damage if you're playing a turn 9 Nosy Kraken.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because the Paladin's already got Alexstrasza and Onyxia. So you probably
it's a
don't
fight
want
between the Shaman and the Druid deck, pretty much. I think that's one of the cards he's gonna keep in mind that he wants in one of his decks, but he's not gonna add it until a bit later on when he decides which deck needs it the most. Try to round out most decks and then look like, what deck does need this Nosy Kraken more, because you have to try to make the decks as even as possible, because it's Conquest, you have to win with them all. So if you make 2 decks insanely powerful and just give the third deck the scraps, then you're probably never gonna win with that deck, and it's gonna cost you the whole series.
Yeah, I actually like
So
the potential of double Stormwind Champion in the Shaman deck actually for late game because
Oh.
you know you're probably going to be toting them up quite a lot, and then suddenly Stormwind Champion gets a lot of value.
Oh, I like that even more because we don't have the Flame Tank totems that are so powerful in Shaman. So then we could use something like Stormwind Champion. That's actually a great idea. I really, really like that.
Yeah, because again, as you said earlier about the Shield Bearer, 7 mana 6/6 isn't terrible in itself, and the Stormwind Champion always does something. Even if it's on the board on its own, it's a big threat to their opponent, and if they don't remove it, you start getting value the following turn by making the bigger minions, of course, because the effect is just a live effect, not a battle cry.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. He's looking a lot at his mage cards, and I just don't see it. I think that his mage cards are way worse than the other three classes, but Ekop seems to see something that I'm not seeing when it comes to those. And it's not like mage would also fight a little bit. It has the mech theme going for it. He had double gorilla bot, but I don't think that's enough to like make those seemingly bad cards work.
Yeah, I think with Mage, at the point Ecop's at now, I would weigh up, is Mage like the spells, as in Poly, Flame Strike, and is the removal good enough to then just put neutrals and some others Mage minions in to make the deck work? Do you know what I mean? Is that the idea where actually I don't have a lot of good stuff, but the stuff I have is actually great? So I'll just fill it out with like some good solid neutral minions to try and build the deck around that. But it looks like he's going back to the Shaman. He is going to start chucking in those battle cries. He's going all in. I actually can't wait to watch him play this deck.
Oh yeah, I really like where this Shaman deck is going. It's including, I think that even Elven Archer, if you're gonna play Bran and double Rumbling Elemental, I would not be ashamed putting an Elven Archer in that deck actually. Yeah. That's one of the things with Sealed. I mean, you really have to look for like the cards that can be potentially powerful, and try to look at new cards that you would probably otherwise not really look at. But I can really see Elven Archer in this type of deck.
Yeah, it could definitely get some work done. I was even looking at a card I love because I love the artwork, but Midnight Drake, the opposite of Twilight Drake, basically. I love the card, but in this format, I don't know. You cannot guarantee a reasonable hand size at any time. You're normally just playing, like as on curve and putting as much stuff on the board as possible. Whilst there isn't really too much card draw available for I think any of the classes Ekop has at the moment. So although I like the card and it could be crazy with Bran or something like that and rumbling, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to make the cut this time.
Nah. I totally agree with you there. We're gonna see. I'm also, one thing I'm really interested about is to see where the Justicar will land. Like, in which deck does he want to run that card? Right now I'm leaning towards the Paladin, but the Paladin already got like such powerful late game, so maybe it's not necessary there.
I think Druid's pretty good though, because it's a stronger removal, right? Like, stronger hero power uses removal in certain aspects and to gain the armor. So I wouldn't mind it in Druid based on what the decks are looking like at the moment. So, like, similar to what you just said, where Paladin doesn't need it. I think Paladin's looking pretty reasonable right about now. So I don't think Paladin really needs Justicar, even though it would be good. Because you do have to spread the power around this. However, the 2 Murloc Tidehunters. And he's just took them out.
I think Ekop is a little bit too snowed in on the Battlecry theme here. I think he should just, like, constantly search for Battlecry and look at just like more all around good cards and see if he can find something to just like round out the deck. Maybe it doesn't have to be a Battlecry minion, so he can skip some stuff like the Murloc Tidehunter. I like that he added a 1 Elven Archer. I approve of that.
Yeah,
giving him a thumbs up for that.
And it looks like the Kraken did make the cut as well, so Kraken is in as like the late game minion that might just be the card that swings a match. But that actually looks like that's a lot of Ekop's late game done. Is this now a mech search to see
what I was looking for the Shaman deck that I would have thought like really interesting is if he took out the Darksea Healers, the Northsea Kraken, and added things like Harvest Golem. The double Stormwind Champion was an idea that I really, really liked from your side. Uh, and then uh, and then from there, and also even maybe added the Night Blades, and just built like an
Yeah,
aggressive
just
sort of
end the
shaman.
game.
So he could use like these more high-end cards like Nausea Kraken and possibly even Darkscale Healer in the Druid deck, for example, for some other decks, and have
Oh,
his Shaman be a little
he's
bit
looking
more
at it
aggressive
now.
deck.
He's actually looking at the Stormwind Champions now for the Shaman. We called, and just to let everyone know, we have not watched this like happen before or anything. This is
Oh, no.
we obviously had to get them to do the draft beforehand, so it was all sorted with deck lists. But this is I really like this from Ekop. I feel like
Yeah.
the Stormwind Champions are always going to get work done. He looks like he's spreading them though. This is going back to what I said earlier, where if you have two Stormwind Champions, then you cannot put two in every single deck. You have to just use the two where you can. So looks like he's gone one for the Paladin, one for the Shaman. I don't mind this. I think at least one for the Shaman is needed.
I see where he's going with this, but I kind of do mind it a little bit because his Paladin deck, as it looks like, it just got incredible late game already. And I don't think it really needs a Stormwind champion, whereas I would love to just build a Shaman as consistent as possible and just have those two Stormwind champions be the end game plan for that deck. And just running one is like, I doesn't feel like he's committing enough to the Shaman deck.
Yeah, I mean,
I would like to see him commit more and do more of a straightforward synergistic game plan, because I really think that the Shaman deck has that available.
yeah.
I want to see the double Elven Archer, double Nightblade Shaman deck happen.
It looks like as well that Ekop's Paladin is actually going to be, or at least hinting-ish, at the Mech Dragon Murloc Paladin, because he's put in the... he did search for mechs earlier. He does have the mini-bot, the Harvest Golem. Does he have anything else? Nothing yet. And it looks like he's gone for Justicar into the Paladin as well, so this deck's looking super strong for me.
Oh, yeah. But what's so interesting about Sealed is that you also have to be aware so you don't make one deck too strong. I agree that his Paladin deck is looking incredible right now, but he also has to make sure that his other two decks are on like similar power level of the Paladin. I would like to see that Haunted Creeper go down to the Shaman deck, for example, because I think that deck needs more help than his Paladin does. That already has like 3 legendaries in it, and double Murloc Knight, and just all these quality cards, double Minibot, I would really like to see some of the more powerful cards in the Paladin deck move to another deck like the Druid. But I kind of see where he's going with the Druid. It looks like he's going to put the Belishers and stuff in there and try to build this ramp up defensive Druid.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to, because otherwise there's no other direction for the Druid to go, right? Like, it's not really... you can't really do much else, because at this point in your sort of draft is that you pretty much have to work with what you have left, because you've kind of built 2 good decks, and then the third always doesn't feel as great, and you really have to be mindful of like managing your resources and what cards are available to you. As you know, you can see Ekop now. Ekop looks like he finished a Shaman deck, but he is going to go back, and this is probably going to happen quite a lot as he builds into finishing off this Paladin and then into his third deck of choice, because you really do need to constantly take a step back from everything and then think about your 3 decks as a lineup, as opposed to, oh, this deck's awesome. Oh wait, now this deck's bad, but I could have used cards from the awesome deck, and then it really does take time. And as we can see the countdown as well,
yeah,
just coming up to 6 minutes.
Only 6 minutes left. It's a very easy trap to just look at one deck and just try to make it as insane as possible and think that I will never lose a single game with this deck, but then have your other 2 decks suffer because of it. I'm actually not sure. I think that Ekop might decide on this Mage deck as his last deck instead of the Druid. It hasn't been looking at the Druid for a good while, and he's been searching for these mechs.
Yeah, and I think as well, just in terms of time, if he starts trying to build this Mage deck, he's probably just going to have to finish it and deal with it, because 5 minutes or just over 5 minutes is not quite long enough to build 2 decks, you know, like, and feel good about it either. So looks like he's just going to commit to this mage deck, and his general plan does appear to be just throwing in good cards combined with what he has from mage already. So he has the polymorph, he has the 2 ethereal conjurers, faceless summon and flame strike as really like the backbone of the deck, I would say. And then just throwing in good solid minions. You can see Bog Creeper goes in, Kodo Rider, Boulder Fist Ogre, you know, he's just chucking in good stuff.
I just feel like all these cards he's throwing into his mage deck right now are just better druid cards. There are some cards he has not used yet. We have not seen him use Shieldwind Yeti, and Mad Scientist have not been used. I think that it would be a crime to leave those 2 cards out. I think he's playing 1 Seeker in the Paladin deck, which is, for me, enough to play a Mad Scientist.
Yeah, I mean, a 2-mana 2/2 isn't horrendous, and a 2-mana 2/2 that a lot of the time will play a secret is actually suddenly very good. So I think it's worth. I completely agree with you there. Oh my god.
Yeah, like
are we gods?
There's a Bloodfen Raptor in that Paladin deck. This is just inexcusable. Get that Bloodfen Raptor out of there and add Mad Scientist Ekop. I think that's exactly what he's doing.
We're like, yeah, but Bloodfen Raptor's a beast.
It is a beast. It is a beast.
Oh, there goes the Druid deck. It's going to be Mage, Paladin, and Shaman for Ekop as his lineup for this King of the Hill series. And he still needs to finish. He's got 4 minutes just under now. As see the countdown timer at the top ticking down. And yeah, I mean, his Shaman deck is filled out, but again, as we said earlier, you always want to be looking back at the decks and make sure you even them out as much as possible. There goes a Stormwind Champion, and there goes back in again. Ekop looks like he's struggling.
He's thinking about moving the Stormwind Champion to the Shaman deck, something that I totally agree with. I would really want to see that happen. I still want to see the second Elven Archer. I want to see the Night Blades. I am very excited what could have been done with this Shaman deck and what I would have done with it. I just want to like rewind time and go to Ekop's place and build this Shaman deck for him. But we will see how it works out.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see this mage deck.
That's one thing too, right? In Sealed, you can have like very different mindsets when it comes to Sealed and be success. And like even if you're 2 great players that really disagree with how the other person thinks about Sealed, like it doesn't mean that one is incorrect. And that's what's so great about it. You can think of it in so many different ways.
Yeah, of course. It's like there's no specific answer because it can't really be solved like a lot of people can say. Constructed it is solved to a certain extent because you're presented with different cards every single time. So your strategy is always going to change and always going to be quite fluid. As we can see, Ekop only 2 minutes left is still looking at the Shaman deck. I think he's been on this deck the longest. And just making slight alterations based on as he's going through his mage, and adds a second Stranglethorn Tiger actually.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Stranglethorn Tiger is a powerful card. He also added a Yeti to this deck, which I don't mind either. What I dislike with how Ekop approached this is that right now he's ended up with like 3 mid-range type of decks, which means that like all of 3 of these decks would have been happy with a Sludge Belcher, right? And all of the decks are fighting for the same kind of card. And I kind of dislike that part about Ekop's deck building. But he also had like a pretty solid card pool that seems to support it. For a lineup that has 3 very similar decks, this is probably as strong as it gets. His card pool really supported something like this. But I would have liked to see one of the decks be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just when you can interchange cards very easily between all 3 decks, it's never going to feel great. This Mad Scientist still not in this Paladin, and I'm not sure what else, like what Ekop is looking for that isn't Mad Scientist to fill this deck out. Because you can see his 2 drops aren't particularly heavy. He has five
Yeah.
2 drops, 5 3 drops, 6 4 drops. You know, it's not like, oh no, I've got 10 2 drops. I don't want an 11th. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really don't get it. I think it's a crime to not include the mad scientist here. Maybe Ekop forgot how broken that card is, but
It has been a while, to be fair.
it has been a while. Oh, not for me. I have my wild hunter deck built that I take for a ride every now and then.
You still stare at longingly sometimes.
Oh yeah, curving out Doctor Boom into Call of the Wild is a delight. Let me tell you.
Oh my! And there's a reason I do not play Wild. Oh, Ekop just hovered over save decks. He's just got to take one final look. He's got a few seconds left, and that is going
and
to be it.
2 seconds on the clock, he says the deck.
He's done this before.
If I were to rate this, I would rate it 6.5 or 7 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
I think his mage deck and his shaman deck are not that powerful, whereas his paladin deck is incredibly good. It's gonna be interesting to see what Powder Powder brought to the table.
Yeah,
but,
I think that felt to me that the last deck was undecided, to like left till too late. You know what I mean? Like it was like we still didn't know whether it was going to be druid or mage until what 5 minutes he started really like fleshing out the mage deck, which I feel like then you're under a lot of pressure. If you can, it's always good to try and split 10 minutes each way, because that's just an even split between 30 of each deck. Obviously at the start it's going to take a little bit longer to really decide what's going to be your 3 or going to be your good deck, but really difficult when you leave 5 minutes to fill out the mage there, and we'll see if Ekop kind of struggles with that. He did end up going for the plan where I've got a few really good mage cards, I'll just throw some neutrals in and see what happens. But yeah, that's going to be it for Ekop's draft, and we are going to move on to Powder's right now. Okay, so here's Powder's draft, and it looks like he's got a good mix of stuff there. We were looking at not too many Hunter cards in the early game. It looks like he's got the Arcane Shot and the Tracking initially, but nothing too crazy. 30-minute timer has started, and we are going to see now how Powder chooses to approach this versus Ekop's approach of spamming all the classes and then building them from there.
I think that from seeing what he opened, I think that Powder's pool is looking a lot stronger, but like just individual cards are a lot stronger, but also a little bit more spread out. I think that Powder got way more options on how to build his deck. It's going to be very interesting to see where he chooses to go with this.
Yeah, the Warlock doesn't look too terrible, actually, there. With Counter Summon, Implosion, a few other 2-ofs in there. Looks pretty reasonable. Because I think 2-ofs are super strong, obviously, just because of pure consistency more than anything. And in Warlock as well, because you can live tap, you really cycle through your deck even faster. So really opens up the options there to get a really strong start for the Warlock. But he's going to start with Druid. And already 2 cards I love, Raven Idol and Enchanted Raven. I think a really good start to the deck, in my opinion, at least, Orange.
Building the Raven deck here seems great. I like where you're starting off. I don't know if he's doing the same thing as Ekop did, but just like putting in all the good class cards for every class first, or if he's actually just looking at the classes that I think are the strongest, because both Druid and Hunter came off as like pretty strong for Powder, from I could tell from the pack opening.
Yeah, even Glaive Zuka and Bow with 2 Huntress and a decent number of secrets. Wow.
So some good secrets too. Snake Trap and Explosive Trap are both great, and Snipe is one of my favorite cards actually. It's really like Snipe.
Yeah, I completely agree. That Hunter's looking really good so far, because again, just the swing potential that traps deliver, and then combine them with Huntress is like, again, just all about just snowballing the game and really getting those big swing turns in this format, I feel. He's going to just fly past Mage. Who cares about Mage? I guess he looked at the cards and thought, this isn't one of my stronger decks, or strongest choices at least. So I'll start with Paladin. Does have Avenge locked in there. Again, Avenge might look bad as a secret just on its own, as a 1-mana spell, and sometimes it's not very effective. But actually, Avenge is probably one of the best secrets in the game, in my opinion. Like the sheer board presence you can gain by that sort of insane buff is nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. We see him go look at something like a dragon priest deck, he opens some very powerful dragons. He has Ysera, Onyxia, Nostorm is not bad, and well, if he wants to go really big, he also got Deathwing Dragon Lord. So there's definitely gonna be one dragon deck, but I don't really know where it's gonna end up. So far, Double Dragon Consort in Paladin looks like the natural home for me, but we'll see where he decides to go with that.
Yeah, I can see Orange there. Sorry, I can see Orange. I can't see you, but I can see Powder just sort of throwing in again just the good cards, the good priest cards overall, if such a thing exists. And yeah, it's not looking too bad either way. I kind of love the way Powder just skipped Mage and Rogue by the looks of things. Probably just decided that you can't make a good enough Rogue deck in Sealed, which is an interesting concept in itself.
He just rules them out immediately. Here comes the deck that's probably the most interesting to me, which is the Warrior deck. Because if I'm not mistaken, he opened double Grim Patron, and he has double Battle Rage, double Whirlwind, double Deathspite. This looks like it could be a consistent Patron deck.
Yeah, so the Warlock one at the moment, though. Oh, there we go. He's onto the Warrior now. So he does have the Patrons available and the Death Bites. He's just putting Command in Shout, Cruel Task, 2 Battle Rage. This is looking pretty... Oh, Bouncing Blades as well. Okay. So suddenly, this is looking more and more like Patron. If only... Look at the War Song at the bottom. If only...
If only... We miss you a little bit, Warsong Commander.
You should come back for sort of just a flurry into Hearthstone once more. Okay, so now Powder having a quick, just quickly glancing over the decks he sort of skipped so far, just to see if there's anything too much going on there. Rogue looks okay, but okay often isn't good enough.
Yeah, with such a powerful pool as Powder opened, I don't think it's necessary for him to look too deep into the Rogue or the Mage. The cards, it just doesn't hold up if you compare it to the other classes.
Yeah, nothing really sticks out too much. Even the Priest could be okay if that's where he wants to go with Dragons, but again, depending on what the Dragons are available for the other decks, it's, is it good enough to just put in Priest because it's Priest? Probably not. He's going to move on to the Mage deck, though. Throwing in all the cards there, adding in the Polymorph, Violence Portal as well. Just chucking them all in there, seeing what's what. We saw him actually counting up the cards, because also you need to think, if I have like 15 Mage cards, then I only have to put 15 neutrals in, and that sort of maths that comes into it and how viable that is for each class as well.
Indeed. So yeah, from looking at this, the classes that really stand out to me are his Druid, I would say his Warrior, his Hunter, and probably his Paladin are the classes that I'm the most excited about.
Oh, okay. I quite like the Druid.
I like it too. It's really close.
Because he's got all the early stuff, right? And like, oh my god, look at that. Look at the selection of dragons. All the dragons you could want. Oh,
I'm just excited to see if he's gonna go with the Deathwing Dragon Lord. I don't think he is gonna play it. I don't think a 10 mana 12/12 is very good, and the effect is rarely gonna be relevant. But you never know. Okay, but I think he's gonna start off with his Paladin deck that just the double Dragon Consort with so many late game dragons. I just think it's a natural home and a natural fit for them.
Yeah, and even Dragon King Sorcerer isn't too bad. He is running Blessing of Kings as well. So and Blessing of Wisdom at the moment. So he does have options with Dragon King Sorcerer just to fill out the curve, because at the moment his 4-drop is a Murloc Knight and then spells and weapons, which aren't normally too fantastic overall. You probably want a couple of minions in there, but not looking too bad. Bookworm, one of my favorite cards from Karazhan. I think it's absolutely amazing. I think it's so cool. It's like I like it's a funny card in terms of like the naming of it. The artwork is fantastic, and the card's actually really good. So it's like ticks all my boxes for Karazhan.
It's a card that's probably, I know, just been surprising me. I was just like, it's a slightly better coda, but after playing with it, it's just like the difference between 3 and 2 attack is absurd.
And aiming the kill as well. That's the big deal.
To square. includes the Hungry Dragon, which I'm not sure if that's necessary. I don't think the card is very good.
I
but
think a lot of the time it causes more trouble than it solves.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, to be honest. So I like the idea of the card, but I think it's not often good enough, especially against certain classes that have like hard removal, like easy options for removal, because then they just kill it and then they have the 2-drop, and then you're like, oh, okay, that sucked, because they just almost gain the initiative off the back of that card. But now we have the 4 legendary dragons. We have Ysera, Deathwing, Onyxia, and Nozdormu. What do you even go for here? I think Onyxia is a clear pick.
I think
Onyxia is too powerful overall.
I think Onyxia and Ysera are slam dunks. You couldn't be happier if I got to choose 2 dragons to open in this format. Those might be the 2 I want to open the most. And I think the Stormo is like, well, of course, the card is kind of a meme on its own, but I think the body for that cost in combination with just being a dragon in this deck, because you can play it on turn 7 with a dragon consort and stuff like that, I think it makes a cut.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I want to put them all in orange. I'm not gonna lie to you, because if you're running those and you're running so many dragons anyway, Deathwing wins you games. Like, it just wins you a game straight away, because your hand is probably full of dragons.
It's like with double dragon consort in deck, I can definitely see a 12/12 for 8 mana. You're never really gonna rely on the effect, but just like that huge for a body for a lower mana cost than usually by the dragon consorts. I could see it, but I think I actually like Nostorm better than I like Deathwing Dragon Lord. But
hey, we can have them all orange.
I can't get behind both. we just play a ball. The greed knows no limits.
I like the way, like, you can just imagine Powder there going, okay, let me just look at this deck to make sure it's still reasonable, because I've just put in 3 legendary dragons in here.
Exactly. Let's think of this thing that's called Mana Curve and see if we can add some early game in it. He has a double Fire Dragon that helps a lot with his Mana Curve.
Yeah.
Actually pretty great. There's a Doomsayer there that maybe one of his decks wants. At least I would think that one of his deck wants Doomsayer. I also like I can't help but look at the Knife Jagger and the double Biofin Tyrant Hunter and just hope that he builds the aggressive Hunter deck.
Yeah, I mean, like, why not? As we were saying earlier, the Aggro Hunter is actually one of the decks I've had the most success with in Sealed. It's like, just got me easy wins. Like, it's very, very powerful, and not a lot your opponent can do about it most of the time.
Yeah, we were touching on this earlier too, on when deck building with Ekop, that you don't get as many answers as you get threats in Sealed, which means that you run them over with a deck like Hunter way more often than you think.
Yeah, and just the relentlessness of the hero power, obviously, combined with not having those answers, really just cause some serious issues for most opponents. But we are still on this Paladin deck, and this one last spot is where Powder is going to have to decide what's going on. I wouldn't even... I wonder how bad the Doomsayer is, even in this deck. Because there is early game, but having just that time where you draw Doomsayer against a more aggressive deck to just play it on 2 and say, let's start the game at turn 3, is going to be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, Doomsayer is just a very powerful card. And it's definitely one that I would like to see in at least... I think it's a mistake to leave it out of just any deck. You should just definitely have it in one of your free decks. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think it suits the Paladin more than the Druid at the moment, because the Druid actually got a really low, powerful curve, and the Druid's going to win with that curve, whereas the Paladin looks like it's going to win through the sheer Dragon synergy plus the late game. So, yeah, Onyxia is sitting in the Druid deck at the moment, but I would definitely like to see that Doomsayer slotting somewhere, as you said, and the Hunter looks good enough to be a deck in itself, and you don't really want Doomsayer in that list, so feels like Paladin's the go-to.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, so Nothing too crazy happening here. Powder's just really just eyeing over his druid list again, just to make sure where he wants to go with it, what the curve looks like. We can see on the top left there that, you know, quite heavy on 2 drops, and then just a sprinkling of 1 and 3 drops to start the early game. But he really, I think he just needs. He's just lacking removal, right? He's only got the 1 Wrath, and he's got Starfire. But often, I feel like in Druid, Starfire is a good card, but not early enough to make a difference in most games. It's if your deck's like a taunt ramp deck, fantastic, but in most games you really want those wraths, swipes, living roots just for the early removal to slow the game down. So he's gone for double Scarab.
When you're missing out on removal, I think it is quite important that you try to go for cards that could like get you back in a game where you're already behind. So I think that I would like the Druid deck to be a Sludge Belcher deck, for example.
Yeah.
I think that Sludge Belcher would make a great fit into his Druid deck.
And I actually really like the Scarabs because the three slot for Druid is actually pretty powerful in the fact that there's potential for cards like Mulch, Feral Rage as well. And he has a Raven Idol. So as you said, it's sort of giving yourself chances to just snap the game back. With cards like that. So I really like it, and he has the room. He's still got 10 cards left to fill out in this Druid deck, so he's got all the room in the world at the moment. I still hope he builds Patron, though.
Yeah, I think he's going to build Patron. I can't imagine him not building Patron with that sort of build.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier.
I just hope that it doesn't, like, misses it or something, but I can't imagine that Powder would do that.
Yeah, we were talking earlier again, just to reiterate, like in Sealed, I cannot imagine a Patron going down and replicating itself even just once and then it being dealt with. You know, on a reasonable board, of course. So, like, exactly. I feel like if you play Patron, you are going to take a win, because if you ever just drop those Patrons and duplicate them, then the game just ends.
Yeah, the Patron is incredibly powerful, and I would think that is going to be his best deck out of the 3 he builds.
Yeah. I wouldn't even mind a Sunwalker in this Druid deck, to be honest.
No, I throw the Sludge Belcher from the Sunwalker in there.
Yeah, and even the Senjin Shieldmaster as well. Just go full taunt, 4/5/6.
Yeah, early game with the Druid of the Flames and Jewel Scarabs, and then you just start taunting up. I really like that sort of game plan.
Yeah, and especially because at the moment his 4, 5, and 6 drops are quite low. He has 2, 1, and 2. So it's not like he's heavy on any of them. So I think there's definitely room for Senjin and the other taunts in Sludge Belcher and Sunwalker. And you know what? There's a Spellbreaker there as well, which is pretty powerful. So if your opponent has got cards like Sludge Belcher and you know, even cards like something silly like Tyrion or Taunt in general, Sylvanas, just any sort of those surprise swing cards that in a format like this can just win you games, if you just even have the Spellbreaker available, that can really do some work.
I think that Psychotron is... You're not too happy about it, but maybe this is the deck for it. I don't think the card... I think the card is kind of underrated.
Yeah, I think just like Divine Shield in general is super strong. The second your opponent doesn't have an easy way to prot the shield, it causes some serious issues. We are still looking at this Druid deck though as
I like Pit Fighter better than Psychotron.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like 2 Pit Fighters, right? Yeah. Wow, that's kind of nuts. So he has gone for now. He has got Senjin, Druid of the Claw, and 2 Sludge Belchers for like the sort of middle game, and the Savage Combatant as well. This is looking really strong, actually. It looks so like on curve that I imagine Powder's going to struggle to not curve out with this deck. You know, it'll be more impressive if he whiffs because his curve is so powerful.
Yeah, I even got the double Jewel Scarab and stuff to fill out the gaps.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
In the curve, I love the look of his Druid deck right now.
And even and really good as well. Just I like the choice of the Onyxia in this deck because it's all early to mid, but then you just have Onyxia if you really need to finish like a control matchup or something, and just really try and end the game if it really comes to it. So I'm a fan of this Druid deck. He's actually swaying me here. I thought the Druid looked a bit meh, but it's looking pretty good now.
Oh, he's making good work of it, for sure.
Okay, on to the Hunter deck. Let's powders
Yep.
take a look at. I do imagine this is going to be piled in Hunter Druid. Nothing else. Oh no, because he's got their patron, right?
Yeah, I
Ooh.
actually don't really know where we're going with this, but I really hope that it doesn't miss that it has a great patron deck going on here.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because, to be honest, all four sound pretty good to me. I would understand picking any of the three of the four here, but the patron just kind of feels great. We'll see when he looks at Warrior more what what ideas he has. He even has like tentacle for patron
Oh, that's true.
and the ghoul. He has unstable ghoul. Literally can
Yeah.
build the old patron deck. Oh my god.
He can.
Put in Elven
Is he-
Archers. Why not?
He's searching for Death Rattle. I guess he's trying to see if he can build some sort of Undertaker deck. But it didn't look like it had too much support right here.
Yeah, and his hunter's missing like Granny, the wolf, missing savannas. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's too much to go for there. I just like the more aggressive line with
Yeah.
Cloaked Huntress. Secret's not normally too aggressive. He does have explosive snake and snipe though, so they're kind of ID gain you tempo or aggressive in their own way. So I like just going super all in with Hunter almost every time.
Yeah, that also means he gets to use his double Bilefin Tide Hunter that I would not see play in any other deck either. It's I really want to see the full face sort of Hunter deck here, especially since he just doesn't have the late game cards for a Hunter deck. River Crocodile is probably good if you have a double kill command and a Houndmaster. I would really like to see the Tide Hunters coming with your Knife Juggler and just pretty good minion on its own.
Yeah, I agree, and even as the I think we saw the, oh my god, I've blanked on the name, the Charged Murloc. Even as at least one of those, as we just saw in the 2-drop.
Bluegill Warrior?
Yeah, that's the one. Could even run the old Ironbeak Owl and really relive the old days. Because I do think that even at 3 mana, you're using that card to end the game, right?
Yeah.
So and Face Hunter kind of floats mana towards the back end because you just don't have card draw. So I wouldn't even mind Ironbeak Owl because at the moment there's no good way to hit through a taunt.
Yeah, you don't have Deadly Shot, you don't have Hunter's Mark. I like where you're going with Ironbeak Owl. Especially since you run the double kill command, you need activators for those.
Yeah, and as well, he has tracking, so there's always a chance of like tracking, and you just pull the Ironbeak and go game over, which is so huge. And just having that out in itself is like worthwhile, I think. Who's going for Snapjaw?
Interesting.
With only one Houndmaster?
We are somewhat desperate for beasts, and we are not looking too strong on the 4-drop slot. I don't mind. I thought I would mind more, but it seems fine to me.
Yeah, okay.
You need that consistent damage. I really do not like that it has double dual Scarab in this deck. I would much rather see them be like Bilefin Tide Hunters or something.
Why? He's just gonna get 4 kill commands in total, Orange. That's the plan.
yeah.
He's gonna quadruple kill command someone to death.
Or you can actually get a lot of powerful stuff, but I would just like to see him curve out and play this more as an aggressive deck. I don't think that either Powder or Ekop are being aggressive enough with their cards.
Yeah, I mean, me and you seem to have the same idea here in that sometimes you just rush someone down when they don't have an optimized deck. And it works quite often, actually, so... I do agree that it could be a good idea to be slightly more aggressive. I mean, like, look, Lance Carrier's sat there. Like, why not? You're running Web Spinners, you're running Snake Trap. Like, play Lance Carrier.
Get Lance Carrier in there. Yeah.
Put him in.
He's thinking about. It seems like he's thinking about maybe cutting the jewel scarabs,
Yeah, we are.
and I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah, we're coming up to like the last 10 minutes now, and we saw that maybe Ekop didn't really have all the time he needed to finish off his mage deck with only 5 minutes left, and Powder's
Mhm.
edging towards that, and he hasn't even looked at Warrior. So is he just gonna
Yeah,
skip it? Orange, we're gonna be disappointed.
I'm starting to think that maybe he's just totally overlooking his warrior, and maybe it's something. Maybe he already thought of it. Maybe he doesn't have enough early game for a warrior deck, but he has a Doomsayer sitting there too.
It's like,
He,
but patron. It's like,
yeah, exactly. I don't know how much early game you need. Yeah, he has unstable ghoul too. I I will be upset if we don't see a patron warrior coming out from powder.
yeah, well, he's running out of time to actually build it, and I feel that Patron Warrior would take one of the longest to build as well, because you have the core, pretty straightforward, but then
Yeah.
ensuring you can build around it and you're not only reliant on Patron to win is pretty important as well. Like, as we said, like, putting the class cards in a deck is pretty straightforward most of the time, because you just know which ones are good. It's how you fill it out and how you use your resources that you've got left to actually make the deck work in general. Still just looking over this Hunter deck. Paladin's looking pretty reasonable. Hovering over the Argent Lance, working out whether that's actually a powerful enough weapon to bother running. But it is a weapon, which is something in itself. Even though Argent Lance is pretty terrible and constructed, just having a weapon available is actually pretty strong.
Weapons are just incredibly powerful.
Double Blessed Kings. Looks like Powder's maybe now just almost happy with his decks. He's just, hitting the stage where you go, right, one last look over all my decks to make sure I'm not being stupid. I'm kind of worried that the Spellbreaker hasn't found a spot, because I feel like, why not? Like, if you're playing Blessing of Wisdom, I'm pretty sure you can play a Spellbreaker instead. I just feel like the card is going to get work done, because a lot of the time in Sealed, you can be blown out by huge impact cards like Tyrion, like Sylvanas, like Cairn. So just removing that as a great factor is actually pretty huge.
Indeed. Are we sure that Powder has 2 patrons?
I'm pretty sure he opened 2. Pretty sure. So obviously, if he had 1, then there's the reason, right? You just don't run patron.
That could be it.
Yeah, I was almost certain I saw 2. There, getting rid of the mage, getting rid of the warrior, getting rid of the warlock, and shock horror, getting rid of the priest.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like he is getting rid of the priest, and it is going to be paladin, hunter, and druid.
I think these decks are looking really strong. If by how they are shaping up, I would definitely put Powder as the favorite between Ekop and Powder. I think that Powder got a little bit more fortunate with the pool he opened, but I also liked how he split up the archetypes and how his decks are trying to do kind of different things.
Yeah, I really like it. I'm quite a big fan of this druid deck. It's like, I'm just going to play good stuff constantly. You have to try and keep up. The paladin deck is more sort of, cover the early game and then go into insane late game that almost any deck in the game won't beat, because it just has so many massive legendaries, and with that Deathwing Dragonlord to sort of finish it up there. And then the hunter being, there's a few cards in there that aren't as aggressive as I'd like. And I don't think he ended up putting Lance Carrier in, which is kind of strange. Mm-hmm. But in general, there is Reckless Rocketeer. There's the secret synergy with the Huntress. He has the overall aggressive package that we've discussed quite a lot, and we actually quite like in Hunter and Sealed.
I think just the game plan of his Hunter goes a long way. And I have to confess here that I couldn't stand living not knowing, so I did message Powder on the side while we were talking. And he thought he only had 1 patron.
Oh yeah, we can see 2 now. Yeah,
but he has 2 patrons, and now he is, and now it's pretty much I just told him that he's dumb, and he agrees.
That
And he's quite upset.
at least he agrees. But yeah, 2 patrons and a lot of good synergy cards we saw earlier that really would have made this deck a bit of a nightmare, to be honest.
So it seems like Powder just missed out on his. But I have to say, I think his favorite deck would have been the best deck in his lineup by a mile. But that said, his decks are still looking really strong.
Yeah, just using the last 4 minutes to work out exactly what he wants to do. If he's happy with his decks, and if there's any last minute changes. I think one of the problems I have sometimes is when it comes to the last few minutes, I feel like I should change stuff. You know, I feel like I should use all of my time, because normally I actually create my decks really quickly, and then I build them, and then go back to them, and then go back to them, and then go back to them for like 10-15 minutes, and mess with them constantly. Probably not a good plan overall, but I always feel like you should tinker all the time and try and use every single second you've got. But sometimes that can work against you, because you've built a good deck, but then you try and change it, and then things start getting worse. So we see Powder actually take out the Reckless Rocketeer and then put it back in. So he's there just messing with a few cards, deciding what he wants here. I think everything looks good to me, at least.
I like the looks of it. There's like maybe not the Hungry Dragon in the Paladin, but there are just like a few cards I would like to change here and there. But I really do agree with some of the things he's doing too. With like he added the Nerubian Eggs, which we didn't. Oh well, then Nerubian Egg, we didn't really talk about that.
Hey, the Nerubian Egg Scarlet Purifier combo.
Oh yeah, or that, or the double Blessing of Kings, you know.
I mean, if you want to go for that one, fine, but
I know, like both of them works, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, but yeah, I do like the eggs in there.
Yeah, and just like there are some cards that it's making good use of that are normally not that great. So
yeah, looking pretty good for Powder overall, and running up to 3 minutes left. I don't know if he'll use all the time or not. He can just finish early if he wants to, but again, like we said earlier, why not? Why not just use all the time you've got, right?
Yeah.
Kind of crazy that both players, although the decks are different, have gone for like Dragon Paladin, because they both had double consort. The power of just like getting certain cards in your pool, it's kind of crazy. Like the double Dragon Consort pretty much meant Dragon Paladin. If you draw, if you sort of like open dragons, of course, but just the sheer power of that card means that you just lean towards that style so heavily.
It's funny how both of them end up with Dragon Paladin, but in general, I don't think I've ended up with a lot of pools that have not included Paladin in this format. Paladin is just like one of the most powerful classes, I would say, in Sealed.
Yeah, especially because, as we said, the GVG Nax is available, especially GVG with cards like Minibot, Mustafa Bal. It can be kind of crazy to just have all these cards available, and Paladin definitely did have just some of the straight up strongest curve cards in the game.
Yeah.
One last look at Deathwing Dragonlord there, just to be like, I do want this in my deck, right? There's the save deck, and they are locked in. Druid, Hunter, Paladin for Powder, and we have ourselves a match. So we are about to get into the match between Ekop and Powder. We have seen the drafts, we've seen their decks. Who do you think is going to take it, Orange?
Going into the series right now, I would say that Powder is the favorite. I think his decks are slightly stronger than Ekop's decks, but Ekop got some interesting stuff going on too, so I'm definitely not going to count it out. But I think Powder, a little bit stronger card pool, but I'd like the Ekop's deck building too, so it's going to be even. I think that it would have been a stone cold blowout if Powder built a patron deck that he admitted that he totally overlooked. But since he has some less powerful decks instead, I think it's going to be a close series.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think I like the style of Powder's lineup better, or the fact he has different styles, whereas Ekop's decks all felt very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to look pretty good for Powder. But I'm sure you think the same. Like when you're playing Sealed, kind of anything can happen a lot of the time, so it's definitely up to go. I will just let these guys know they can go, and we will get into the game.
Yeah.
So it's going to be best of 5 conquest, sealed format, Powder versus Ekop.
It's going to be a great match.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, except Ekop is taking his time. There we go, we're in the
There
game.
we go. So Powder is starting off with his super top end Paladin deck versus the weird mage deck from Ekop that none of us really liked all that much, right?
Yeah.
The one that has like some mechs in the early game, but late game it just has taunts, and we are not really sure why.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this hand, it's like, oh, guy's playing like a slow tempo mage, like awesome. But in general, like I think Ekop's approach was pretty much just, I have some good mage cards, I'm gonna chuck them in, and then I'll fill out the rest with whatever I've got. There was no really like grand plan, and we see now Powder actually starting with the old mini bot turn 2. How we have not missed you, my friend. And
oh, you say that, I missed it a great lot.
I mean, so don't get me wrong, I love Secret Paladin, for example. I actually really like the deck, but playing against it when it was like coin minibot used to be the most horrible thing. But looking at Powder's hand, he has a fantastic curve, and Ekop's kind of not struggling to deal with this, but I think he's just going to ping down the minibot now and have a strong next turn with Flame Waker, potentially into coin Frostbolt. But look at this, already Powder kind of running away with the game.
Yeah, this is an incredible start. This is like constructed worthy, and his follow-up is not looking worse either. Like he has Dragon Consort into Ysera coming up, even if Ekop deals with this efficiently. He needs one of these to hit the minibot though, and gets the perfect on the both minions to kill them off. I think you lead with Pit Fighter because you're not gonna be able to play Ysera until turn 7 anyway, and Pit Fighter is more likely to survive removal spells.
Yeah. We see the Corrupted Seer again. This is when you start to see the mage deck is maybe its flaws in where it's like, oh, I mean, Corrupted Seer could be good if there's like a Zeus style deck been built, but not going to do too much work elsewhere. But did manage to deal with that Pit Fighter. But now that's the one polymorph I believe gone.
And they also missed with the Flame Waker, so he actually gets to trade off here. We'll see if Powder is going to be mana efficient and use the Blessing of Wisdom. He declines to. I think I agree.
Yeah, this is kind of nuts already. There's a 5/5 on the board for Powder, as well as having the weapon still equipped. But he can just play Ysera next turn. It's kind of nuts. Just turn 7 Ysera, do it. By the holy light. Oh, well, there we go.
And Ekop uses Polymorph. I don't think he has a good answer to this. Not one that's coming soon, at least.
Yeah, so
like Balder Fist Ogre into Forbidden Flame, but Dream is gonna put a solid stop to that plan too.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. He did actually get Dream. He even has the Bookworm. No dragons to actually do anything here in terms of proccing the Bookworm.
Not only can he draw them, but also he can get them. He can get Emerald Drake from Ysera.
Silver Moon Portal, anything in Holy Light. I'm liking Silver Moon Portal here. Heal for 4. Yeah. Dreams
Silver Moon Portal looks great. This is just starting to become a blowout from Powder side.
This was just the result of a insanely good curve from Powder and straight into Ysera. But to be honest, we said like Powder's dragon deck looked insane. And it was enough as long as he literally didn't draw like 4 7 mana plus cards in his opening hand. His deck looked really strong. It's going to be the Ogre again from Ekop, just trying to keep it on the board this time, and hopefully there's not a second Dream from Ysera. But now with Ysera drawing a card, giving him a Dream card, there's a lot that Powder can do this turn, and he can pretty much do whatever he wants.
Well, but I look at first sight, it's just Silver Moon Portal on the Ivory Knight and an Argent Protector. Oh, right, he needs one more power for that.
Yeah, that'll only go up to 6.
Oh, well, this works too. Just trade both.
Yeah, it means you can keep hold of the Silvermoon Portal. Do you see a Death Lord in this deck from Powder, which is actually I found that to be more problematic than good in most sealed matches I play, because there's always a way to kill it easily, and suddenly they draw something like Ysera off the Death Lord, so that feels pretty terrible.
I actually like it quite a lot in sealed, just because, as you said, there's not you can't choose your answers, but you have to like you're at the mercy of what you opened, and therefore it's like harder to answer a Death Lord than it is in constructed.
Yeah,
But I don't like Death Lord as much in control decks, but I like it more in the aggressive decks. You like hide your 1 and 2 drop behind it and getting damage with them instead.
yeah,
So I actually play it as a very, very aggressive card whenever I play Seal.
yeah, and look at this already. I mean, this hand plus board state shows what kind of mage deck this is. It's just random cards to a certain extent put in and hoped it would be good enough. Buckworm. Now, there is a dragon. There's the Hungry Dragon available here, so he is able to kill off the Seer pretty easily. And now just plop the Deathlord down, and there's just not really a lot Ekop can do with it. It does have the Flame Strike, but when there's Ysera still just sitting on the board, it's going to be pretty horrible.
Powder was also just a few points away from lethal that turn.
So what do we have
And
here? Two Blessing of Kings and a Nightmare. Oh my god. Spell damage Flame Strike gonna help, but it's not gonna be enough unless something godlike comes from this Death Lord. But even so, is there just enough
there
buffs
is
on...
Fog Creeper.
Oh, Eldritch Horror! Has anyone ever seen this card on the board in Hearthstone that doesn't play Arena? Probably not. So this is kind of nuts.
I think Powder is pretty happy about this, because from the cards we've seen in Ekop's Mage deck, it's looking quite embarrassing, and I think Powder thinks that he can beat this deck several times with his other decks.
Yeah, and just a casual 18-18 Ysera. He could have carried on with more Blessing of Kings, but something to bear in mind, although not that it matters because he's won. I would have preferred the Blessing of Kings, to be honest, as because it's not like he's trying to hide more information, because obviously the difference between 1 and 2 Blessing of Kings is actually very very big.
We already see the BM in emoting. You just take it all the way, Powder.
Why not?
Show him how big your Ysera is.
So that is going to be
compensating for something. I don't know. You tell me.
It's going to be 1-0 to Paladin. A very, very straightforward game. Sometimes this happens if someone's just drafted a really powerful deck. Then there's nothing. A lot of the time you can really do about
it. Here comes the deck. I was talking briefly with Powder before the match. The deck he thinks is the least powerful out of his 3 decks. But I do think that his 100 deck matches up really well against Ekop's decks.
Yeah, again, I just think the Hunter deck and all of Powder's decks really just have a really clear game plan, whereas Ekop's decks are more decks with good cards in them. Yeah, and relying on that, to be honest. So, we'll see how it turns out. Having an Arcane Anomaly turn 1 feels pretty good, as he can actually coin into Bow next turn if he really wants to just buff it up to a 2/2. But again, Shielded Minibot doing the old work.
Yeah, Minibot, as broken as we remember it, just an insane card. See Ekop with like the perfect hand you would want against a deck like Powder's here, with triple 4 2 drops even. He can go 2 into 2 into double 2, which is just absurd.
Yeah, kind of crazy overall. With Haunted Creeper coming down now again, this is just bringing us back a fair few months now, as Minibot Creeper were pretty horrendous to deal with. And he does have the Mad Scientist with that Avenge in the deck as well, so that's going to be really nice for him to just get an easy Avenge pulled off there.
Here we see pretty tough choice. He decides to go with the KotH Hunters. I can't blame him. He has several secrets in this deck, so it's probably gonna pay off.
Yeah, and also KotH Huntress is like just decent stats. It's a 3/4 for 3, so it's pretty good in itself. So not too bad at all. Mad Scientist looks like it's gonna come down and do its he's having his victory lap here as he gets to play the game again in a format that isn't completely wild, and draw himself a Avenge for Ekop here at some point.
Yeah, this is looking really good for Ekop. I think that Powder is favored in this matchup just because Ekop's deck is pretty late game based, but where I think Ekop's drawn almost every single 2-drop he has available in his deck. So
yeah, it's looking pretty even so far, to be honest. The Glaive Zook is definitely going to help just clear up. As you mentioned earlier, weapons are actually very powerful in this game, in Sealed specifically as well. So, Glaive Zook itself can help push more damage, clear off the Scientist, and suddenly that Grub is still getting some work done as a 3/4. Until
yeah,
we see Blessed Kings come down and finish this up pretty well.
yeah, and now Powder just lost the board pretty much, and I don't see how his deck has great ways of coming back from something like this. The best way is to start playing them. Just play your Hunters, play your Acidic Swampus, let them trade.
Yeah, I think you have to just splurge everything onto the board here because you do have access to the Eaglehorn Longbow. It means you can get more value generally out of the cards you have in hand. Just because of the value you get from the weapon over the course of a couple of turns. But there's a Zoobot. If no one knows what this does, Battlecry give a friendly Beast, Dragon, and Murloc +1/+1. So at the moment, it'll just give his Murloc +1/+1 if he plays it, but good to just have available as we saw Ekop kind of go for this Beast, Murloc, Dragon deck.
Yeah, they started the Commander, killing off a 3/4. Almost as good as back in its glory days when it was used to kill off the Azure Drakes that were a little bit everywhere.
Back when it had 3 health as well.
Oh yeah, I miss those times. Pyroblast was 8 mana.
Oh, good old Hearthstone.
How I get into Hearthstone pretty much.
Okay, so Murloc Knight is an option here. Now, I imagine you do want a hero power here as Ekop. You don't normally want to play Murloc Knight and pass up a hero power to play Zoobot, because +1/+1 won't change too much when he's looking at more than likely... Oh, is he not going to trade into the Huntress?
Oh, I like it. Powder is at 14.
Yeah, and he has Hammer of Wrath, actually.
He's almost dead.
Yeah, he has Hammer of Wrath as well, so...
I would go Faces to Place here. And just put it on Powder to answer this.
Okay, so he's gonna...
This is not looking like what you want to do.
No. He's going to use the Rocketeer to kill the Murloc, but he's looking pretty rough.
That feels really bad. And that is the bigger Zoobot, Mangary Warden.
Yeah, give him +2/+2, 5 mana 4/4. I wasn't even sure of the stats on that guy. The artwork is pretty amazing. But overall, this is still looking good for Ekop. It looked like Powder could have just about stabilized there, because Powder normally doesn't have a lot of burst available to them. But the follow-up with the Dragon into the buff is just too much. There's just not going to be enough. We see Pit Fighter in hand for Powder, but it's not going to be enough to finish this game out. Draws into Juggler. What beast can he get, Orange? Not enough.
What beast that could save him there? I actually don't know. I don't think there is. King of Beasts could delay it a little bit, but that's pretty much it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy overall. So, Ekop with just as much a convincing response. It's evened it up 1-1. And it's kind of nuts. I thought the Hunter deck would perform a lot better than that, but I suppose Ekop's draws were pretty on point there. Just managed to sort of snowball him out of it. And I think the Scientist getting the work done. Scientist and Creeper, 2 key cards in that match then. It's like just like the old days.
Yeah, he used all the 2-drops that he needs, and especially when it's the quality of Creepers, Scientist, and Miniboss, that is just really hard to beat.
Yep, just that old early game we used to know and hate or love, depending on who you were. So it's going to be into game 3 now. It is 1-1. Ekop versus Powder in Sealed. And it's going to be Ekop giving this Mage deck another whirl. And again, every time he locks it in, I'm scared.
How much do you like this hand from Powder Raven?
I think it's great. The 2 cards, the Onyxia and the Klaxi, meh. But then you look at the other 2, and oh my god, they both have Raven in the title, and that's all we really need to know.
Exactly, right? You couldn't ask for more.
Well, I could ask for the opening hand to be 2 Enchanted Ravens and 2 Raven Idols.
Oh, come on.
No, now that's an opening hand, Orange.
That is. Beast Druid. Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Exactly. We see the opening hand from Powder post Mulligan, actually looking very, very strong again. Whereas Ekop's looks like I drafted his arena deck.
Yeah,
this is what Ekop's deck looks like. It looks like I've drafted it.
This is what I expect. My prediction is that Powder Frio's this deck from Ekop, but if he loses to this deck, he's gonna be in real trouble. Here, I think it's a pretty easy feral rage. You don't have a turn free play, and you want to respond to anything that Ekop does on his turn free.
Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Feral Rage is such a good card. Oh my god, so flexible.
It does everything pretty much.
Just wins games. Dalaran Aspirant gonna be coming down as a pretty solid drop actually. Really strong stats, and it has a pretty good Inspire mechanic as well. Every time you hero power, you get +1 spell power on that minion, but normally it doesn't last too long, and it's normally too slow to do anything. And again, we just see Savage Combatant drop down as a 5/4, and basically Powder saying mine's bigger than yours at this point.
Yeah. But by the looks of it, if it doesn't choose to polymorph this Savage Combatant, it has to either use Forbidden Flame or trade into it.
Nothing feels too great here. Oh, he's gonna okay, he's gonna do that. That's actually not too bad. He's gonna either take damage to kill off the Raven, or if he respects me in any way, he leaves it alive. So good job, Ekop. I get to stay on the board for a bit.
He does not get a default clause for just killing the Raven.
I know, it's just kick him out of the game.
Not allowed. No such things.
Okay, so Powder has the joy of it being spoilt for choice here, but that is a very key draw now for Ekop. That suddenly actually changes everything, because the Flame Strike can almost deal with like anything that Powder's going to play next turn and clear it up. But it's the follow-up. Ekop just doesn't have the follow-up after the Flame Strike.
As much shit as we gave Ekop's deck, it actually has a couple of things going for it. And this, that it has these like incredibly powerful cards in this format, like Flame Strike, that Faceless Summoner, like even simple things like Frostbolt are just very, very strong.
Yeah,
that's a big one.
And this is a 5 damage Flame Strike because of the Aspirant being alive after the hero power. So this is looking to be very, very powerful if the Aspirant can live. But we see Starfire, a huge draw from Powder there, can actually clear up the board, leaves his Pitfighter alive on 1, and more importantly, does not fall into the Flame Strike trap.
Starfire just performs double duty there too. This is looking like it's going to be a pretty long, drawn-out game, and Starfire just picks a Powder an extra card that he's definitely going to need in this sort of game against this grindy mage deck of Ekop.
Yep. Does the Oracle there? Not Oracle, the Seer it's called, right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
The Seer did manage to get a good pick off on the Pitfighter, but the only problem is you've just spent 6 mana pretty much your whole turn to deal with a 1 health creature, and you've only put a 2/3 on the board, and you're against Druids, so definitely not feeling too great. Versus anything else wouldn't have worked too well. Like the Gorilla Bot and Soot Spear would have left the Pitfighter alive, and then so on, so on. So Ekop making the best of a bad situation there.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's just a simple. He needs to pick up a pretty powerful mech here.
Miron's head,
because
go!
He doesn't have. Well, you could play Mibron's head this turn. He would have Voltron assembled if Powder wouldn't interact with.
So okay, question Orange. This is for 10 Raven points. Does Mimron's head count itself as a mech when it's in the 3?
Yes.
Okay, so it's itself and 2 mechs.
Yeah.
Okay. I presume I don't know the answer. I'm just presuming you're correct.
But I actually have to admit that it's still on my bucket list. I have not myself summoned Voltron a single time, and I'm pretty ashamed of it.
Oh really?
So that is something that I have to do before I before I leave this world in hopefully
Well,
a
before you
a whole
leave
lot
the
of
Hearthstone career at some point, potentially in the future. But let's
Yes.
not talk about before you leave this world. We never want you to go Orange.
That's it. We could talk about more fun things here. We have a great
Exactly.
Hearthstone match right in front of us.
Yeah, and speaking of great, Powder has many, many great choices this turn. He can almost just do what he wants because I feel he's so far ahead. He's seen the Flame Strike. The odds on there being two in the deck and in hand are pretty low. The Scarab comes down and actually, I'm
Then
liking
again,
Fiola.
if you're Powder, you just want to get this out there. If you're Powder and you see all of these bad cards that Ekop has been playing so far, you have to think to yourself, why would Ekop play Mage if his deck is this bad? There has to be something about Mage that made him choose it. And right now, I would probably think that it is because he has like multiple of some incredibly powerful card.
Yeah.
So I would not rule out the second Flame Strike by any means.
Yeah, or even potentially like double Fireball, double Frostbolt. You know, because sometimes that's just enough to win. You know, the tempo those cards give you is just enough to actually carry the game there. So, not bad overall. The Shade looking pretty nice, unless Ekop can kill it off next turn by clearing the board and giving him a pretty good shot at killing off the Shade. Because any more than that, it's going to get very difficult as Flame Cannon only does 4.
Powder, again, I used to love counting lethal. Was not very many points from having lethal that turn. I think like 4 or 5 damage off. But I absolutely agree with this line. The little bit slower, more controlling line. He has a great hand and can probably grind Ekop out from this sort of position.
Yeah, I mean, and it's only going to get worse for Ekop as Powder isn't exactly all in, as he has a follow-up of Druid of the Claw and Klaxi Amberweaver, so, you know, the idea here for Powder is that he's just going to put walls up that your opponent can't deal with, but KotH Rider definitely helps. 8 mana for a 1 damage and 2/3/5 seems pretty okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very powerful card and a great pickup for Ekop. Power the Wild. Not as flashy as KotH Rider, but also really does the trick right here.
Yeah, it makes the kill on the KotH Rider very clean, as I feel like this just has to be removed at this point. And being on 2 health means the claw's pretty safe, so everything feels good unless exactly a Flame Strike comes out. Bog Creeper, not a bad draw for Ekop whatsoever.
It's a big minion, although it's just gonna, if he decides to play it here, it's just gonna trade for Knight of the Wild and a Hero Power. Maybe it's not something he's too upset about, though.
Well, I think the issue as well is Psychotron does the same, right? But worse, because it trades for the Druid of the Claw. So, you know, Bog Creeper at least makes, or at least potentially forces your opponent to put in their biggest minion into it. Oh, is he putting both? Oh, okay.
Yeah, also the ping on Druid of the Claw, I think this is totally correct.
Yeah.
And I also really like how Powder has been trading with his Knight of the Wild this game to play around the 1 polymorph. He actually knows that Ekop is playing. Really strong play from Powder overall this game.
Yeah, and there we go. We see the 5/9 is going to get polymorphed instead, which means that the Knight of the Wild is actually going to die if it trades into the Psychotron.
But then again, he has 2 great follow-ups to this, and he's actually pushing Ekop pretty low here.
Well,
and Zenid is a good draw because that means that Ekop can't put for lethal of his own with the Baldur Fist Ogre.
Yeah, and this is what we were saying when we were looking at Powder's deck. It was like, any draw feels great. Like, his deck is so powerful on curve. It's literally 1 to 6, really. You know, all his draws are so heavy that any card he draws, he has the benefit from Druid, where it's probably going to be good late game. I say that as Wrath is drawn, but he can cycle it. And all the 4 drops, 3 drops, 5 drops are super powerful. And yes, the Yasharaj. I didn't realize he put Yasharaj in the deck, but why not?
As good of a draw that is in the late game, that might have been the worst draw he could possibly have from the Wrath there.
Yeah.
But I still think it's in a good spot here.
Yeah, I mean,
he just has lethal, right? There's no way for Ekop to stop this, I don't think. Yeah.
No, I don't think so, and that's going to be it. So
2-1-2 Powder, and Ekop is struggling with the Mage deck. It's
not a surprise.
No, not really. This was kind of expected. Ekop's deck is looking a bit junky, and the results are telling me I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, and again, just to reiterate, when we go back into the deck building portion, Ekop spent 5 minutes on the mage deck and 25 minutes on all the other decks. So it's kind of crazy overall that, you know, he only spent like this much time on that one deck and it didn't. It's definitely not paying off. We can see that. It pretty much is a few good mage cards and that's it. And filler, which just isn't working out for him at all.
I was talking about how I liked the Hunters matchup versus Ekop's decks, but this is probably the matchup I like the least. Ekop's Shaman deck has lots of early game, and also just can't see how Powder wins against the Rumbling Elementals. So I think this is going to come down to a series. The series is going to come down to a 2-2, and we are going to decide it by the two decks that the players like the least from their lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be more than likely the Hunter versus the Mage, but Hunter still has a good chance, I think. Just because of the hand, the way it's looking now, I would definitely like a kill command here. I don't feel like anything else is... The other two are super good in the correct situation. Oh, he's going for Power Shot. I suppose against Shaman it could feel okay because of the totems.
And also he knows that Tunnel Trog is going to attack into one of his minions next turn. So, like, even... And if Ekop plays an average 2-drop, he's going to get a good value Power Shot on the following turn.
Oh my god, Echoing Ooze. If that comes down, it's getting completely wiped out. But let's go for the Sentinel instead, just to put more power on the board overall versus the volume of minions. And also going into turn 3, so, you know, maybe an Unleash makes Echoing Ooze the worst play there. But not too bad at all for Ekop. I just like the bow here.
I don't know. This is a pretty tempting Power Shot, if you ask me. And it's not a bad carrion grub, but I think that's the least likely. Okay. Now he decides to go with the carrion grub.
I think the issue with Power Shot is you're only leaving a web spinner on the board, and then your opponent's going to pile up the board again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's your presumption anyway, so I like saving the Power Shot for when you can work it in with other things. But yeah, the grub's pretty good. There's not a lot that's really going to kill it, and if your opponent puts too much into killing it, then you're probably feeling pretty good anyway. There's the Rumbling Elemental, though. And we have Echoing Ooze next turn for a guaranteed battle cry if Ekop wants it.
Oh, but that's a really good 2-drop pickup from Powder. Kindly Grandmother, one of the newer cards from Karazhan that has given Hunter a huge boost.
Yeah, it's it took me the longest time to work out whether I even liked Kindly Grandmother, because it felt super underwhelming sometimes. But just having a death rattle that pops out a 3/2 is kind of nuts. You know, you can't really argue with how nuts that is. So
yeah, it's kind of the same as Haunted Creeper when it came out. It doesn't look impressive, but then you play with it, it's just like so annoying, and you never really want to deal with it, and it just like ships in for damage. You find out that it's exactly what you want.
Yeah, and the Rumbling Elemental actually already done his job. It managed to kill off the grub with the battle cry from the oozes there, so it's looking pretty good so far for Ekop. And I think this deck is playing out how I imagined it in general. Just a lot of really powerful early cards, and you know, the second a Rumbling Elemental sticks, which with 6 health it normally does, you start to really get into some trouble. And now though, Ekop has to work out what trap it is, because if that's explosive, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, then you're in really bad shape. So I think it's gonna be balls and you just play the Yeti first, and it's gonna get rewarded for it because, well, we know that it's a snipe.
Yeah, Yeti does live, and we also know that although we can obviously see Power Shot in hand from Powder, he doesn't run. I don't think he opened any Unleash the Hounds either. So Ekop, although going to be wary of it, knowing it's sealed as well, won't be too upset, you know, about going wide on the board anyway.
Here comes the Power Shot he's been wanting, and just as you said, he gets to develop the board meanwhile. This is actually great.
Yeah, this is a super big swing turn. He has the Panther down as well, and just getting the Arcane Anomaly. I'm gonna check. Yep,
Yeah,
that
I
is the
think
name of the
that's what I
card.
wrote, yeah.
Getting that buffed twice with spells is really cool as well, because suddenly a 2/3 is kind of awkward to deal with. And here's some snakes, Orange.
Yeah, this. I thought this was looking really bad for Powder, but he's found a way to turn this into his favor, and I would say it's looking really, really good for him instead.
Yeah,
Uh,
because it's Ekop
off-
couldn't afford to lose the board, right? Like that's and it's the same with Shaman a lot of the time. Unless you're playing like aggro Shaman, a lot of the time if you lose the board, you're in trouble. And that was a really powerful turn from Powder and really good sort of foresight to pick the power shot and then wait to get like a really strong use to try and swing the turn out of it. So looking really good, and Ekop has to work out whether he wants to lightning bolt this 4/2, but if he does, it means he can't play the only minion he currently has playable next turn.
I think there are very few draws in Ekop's deck that doesn't allow him to have a play next turn. So I kind of agree with this Lightning Bolt. I think it's the correct choice.
River Croc.
Not sure if I agree with this though. As the Smorg player I'm not sure if I would have liked to see a Reckless Rocketeer straight to the face.
Yeah, but this creates bigger Smork next turn, Orange. Come on.
I want to Smork... Raven, you don't understand. I want to Smork right now.
Oh, well, you can wait 5 minutes, okay? And then we can Smork.
You clearly don't understand the way of the hunter here, Raven.
Hey.
We have to do lessons of this. This is unacceptable.
Okay, well, this is the Smork turn. It didn't take too long, did it? You didn't have to wait. But I imagine we are going to see a hero power as well now. You do want to work in a hero power every single possible opportunity, especially against a class that doesn't normally have access to too much healing. And suddenly, the 6 health of the Rumbling Elemental is quite insignificant compared to its 2 attack. So it's not going to do too much now on the board. Are the Battle Cries going to do anything? No, because they're non-accessible. Champions looks like it's going to come down, but even Storming Champion doesn't really do too much extra here.
Ekop does not have a lot of time to work with here. I like almost none at all, and we also know that there are 2 kill commands in Powder's deck, as well as Jewel Scarab that can pick up damage if drawn. So
yeah, there's literally 2 damage needed from Powder to end this game this turn, and it is going to be a pit fight, so not 2 damage, but the problem is his hero power does it the turn after, which is the scary part versus Hunter.
Wait, we have 6, 9, 11. That is lethal.
Oh my god, is the Kraken going to win?
Yeah, it's exactly lethal.
That is unbelievable. Never mind.
That is a close game if I've ever seen one.
I want to see where the Rumbling Elemental damage goes. That's what's important to me right now, Orange. You need to Kraken first, just to see if you get like a swag Rumbling Elemental. It is lethal, yeah. Here we go, and that is going to be... Oh, look at Powder's response! You can't believe it!
Not happy to see that.
That casual 10-8. Oh, there we go. The Earth Elemental... the Rumbling Elemental, sorry, did go face. And Ekop...
The Rumbling Elemental knew what the Smork was all about.
Exactly. He didn't mess about. The Rumbling Elemental is clearly a Hunter player. 100%. But what a crazy game, actually. That was so swingy.
Really close.
And the guys are getting straight back into the last game. They are not messing about. And as we sort of half predicted, it is going to be Ekop's Mage versus Powder's Hunter. So the two weaker decks, right, in all the lineup.
Yeah. But both of them have... I feel like Powder's deck is a bit more consistent, whereas Ekop deck has a bigger nut draw potential. And looking by the hands, I would say that it's looking quite good for Ekop, having both the Babbling Book and the Flame Waker, which are both key to this matchup.
Yeah, and even, you know what, like Bone Guard Lieutenant can actually kind of get out of control. The 3 attack is really strong and gets a lot of work done, and it needs to be dealt with quickly because Mage will probably not feel too bad about pinging in this matchup because, it can normally take off a lot of creatures with that, and I saw your facial expression there, and that Frostbolt looking pretty nice off Babbling Book.
Yeah, that is disgusting and making me look stupid forever doubting the Babbling Book.
Well, that's what Babbling Book does. It's going to be the Bone Guard Lieutenant coming down, though, instead of the Frostbot and the Juggler this turn. Holds on to it, which I think's fine. The odds on the Bone Guard dying this turn and the Juggler causing you massive issues are pretty low.
I also like it because you can save it for turn 4 together with Flamebreaker Coin Frostbolt, which should always give you back the board versus Powder's deck as it's built.
Yep. Just going to go for the Soot Spewer on the board now to just at least challenge this Panther when it comes out, or if it comes out. There we go. See, are you liking these plays, Orange?
Yeah.
Straight to the face?
I like it a lot, but not only because I love going face, but also it's Powder realizing that if I keep trading, he is gonna value me out of this game. But yeah, this is not really gonna work out for him that well.
This is a tough one, though. Where do you aim that Frostbolt? Because the Panther is the guaranteed kill, right? But it looks... okay. So I was going to say, he could trade into the Snapjaw, kill it, and just hope that the damage kills it off. And now he's going for the Panther.
Not too sure about how...
I would be scared of just, like, Houndmaster completely ruining your day here.
Yeah, this is definitely what Powder is looking for here, hoping they can find a Houndmaster.
I mean...
Does not pick it up.
Yeah...
This is starting to look better and better for Ekop. With Sludge Belcher and Coda Rider. Sludge Belcher making sure that it doesn't take too much damage, then Coda Rider just trying to close out the game quickly on Powder.
And even... So a few of the cards that we've seen now, Flame Waker... Babbling Book, and the Ethereal Conjurer, there's 2 of in this deck as well. So I know we've been kind of like crapping on Ekop's Mage deck a bit, but these are the reasons he's playing Mage. These cards, like Ethereal Conjurer is fantastic. Flame Strike, another card that's fantastic. Flame Waker can just carry games. So there is a reason Ekop's playing this deck. It's just the deck is weaker than the rest of his lineup, but if he can get the right draws and get some work done, it's going to be pretty good here. Is now just playing the Coda Rider and just saying, you kind of need to kill this, because if you don't, I'm just going to spawn more 3/5s.
The powerful cards in Ekop's deck are really powerful. That's for sure. And he seems to be drawing most of them right now. Yeah. There is no play that Powder can do here that doesn't get totally blown out by Flame Strike next turn.
Yeah, well, he could actually just kill Command Quick Shot and then trade the Yeti into the 2/4. It's terrible. It feels terrible.
Okay, yeah, but that is the best line if you expect Flame Strike.
If you commit to the board, then you're leaving either the Kodo or the Flame Waker up. Either one's a problem. That's the issue, right? Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving any of these minions up. And at the end of the day, you have your Hunter Hero power that's gonna help end the game, and then you just follow up with Arcane Anomaly and Cloaked Huntress. Yeah, I really like this.
Yeah. This is he knows that there's a Flame Strike in Ekop's deck too, so I agree with his line of play.
Dragonhawk Rider. Right. Why not?
Yeah.
Is there a world in which...
I don't know. Looking at Powder's deck, I wouldn't expect to say that I think the deck with Lowly Squire, Sooth Spewer, and Dragonhawk Rider in hand is the favorite to win the game.
I know. It's only going to make Powder feel worse if he loses here. But this is... I was going to say, is there a world in which you don't Flame Strike? But I think I like Flame Strike because Hunter has no cards.
I think you can hold it for one more turn.
It just makes... I suppose he has Squire. It depends what he wants to do with his turn, because... okay, so he's just going to put all this onto the board. Fine. It's just like your Flame Strike sort of feels bad compared to your Conjurer next turn. Because Conjurer, there are a lot of decent 3-mana spells that Mage can get. So you can then Conjure straight into a 3-mana spell, potentially. But, yeah, this is okay, I guess. Pit Fighter definitely resistant to Flame Strike if Powder chooses to trade.
But he can't trade away. He can't trade into both minions. So Ekop, if he plays a KotH Hunters, Ekop is gonna have the option to clear.
Ooh.
And Powder knows at this point that he can't beat Flame Strike, so he's just gonna pretend that Ekop doesn't have it and is gonna be in for a rough,
Yeah.
rough surprise
Oh,
here.
cloak! He can cloak the 3/3. Oh my god! Well, the Wind Fury, the Dragonheart Rider. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
He can
that's
actually
true.
cloak it if he wanted to. I would have liked to see the cloak.
I think you can save it for next turn. And just that's actually even setting up lethal, right? Or is it? Next turn you get in for 8 damage. With a Conjurer, yeah, it should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of bad when Imp Master's your best choice from a Discover.
Yeah.
Especially when you get Mage that can ping. So the 1/1s effectively are just cost the Mage 2 mana a turn if they're even that bothered about it. So it's going to be, what, 8 damage this turn coming out from Ekop, at least just from the minions and the ping.
And if there's any burn picked up here.
Okay, I feel
all
like...
of these options are actually as great.
I was going to say, I feel like Missiles or Nova are the correct play, but I want Tome. I always want the Cabalist Tome.
Let's just say this. I think that all 3 options will eventually win you the game. But I think Tome, sadly, as sad as it is to say, it is the worst choice out of these.
Oh, he picked it though! Ekop, you legend.
Okay, Ekop is the people's hero.
Yeah. Not a surprise whatsoever. Ekop being the boss as always. And now, what does Powder even do? There is really not a lot going on. It's going to be the concede.
And Ekop wins. His Mage deck.
We didn't think it would happen.
Finally gets the win. And Powder did admit that if he paid more attention during deck building, he would not play that Hunter deck, but would instead have the Green Patron deck that looked great. So I think we can boil that down to the deck building, really. That if Powder had seen his Green Patron deck that was available, it would have been a very, very different series. But now it is as it is, Ekop managed to win with that Mage deck versus the worst out of Powder's 3 decks.
Yeah, and again, it just goes to show that with the sealed format, it's not just about your ability to pilot like decks in Hearthstone, right? As we saw, it's your ability to theory craft, deck build, work on a time limit as well, because as we saw, both players pretty much went to the end of the time limit, and probably if I said to them, do you want 5 more minutes, they probably would have said yes. So, you know, really is a lot of this game goes on before the actual match itself has even started, but I really enjoyed that overall. That was this is like the beginning of the King of the Hill series for Sealed, and Ekop is now the King of the Hill, so his next challenger will be coming soon, and I believe it will be you, Orange, if you're up for it, mate.
Oh, I absolutely want to play this. Just watching these two build and play has really got me itching. I want to be part of this too.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. But no, thank you for casting me though. It was a pleasure. We had a lot of fun. Some crazy decks and just really going pretty in depth in the deck building was a ton of fun for me at least. And I'm sure again you enjoy your Sealed. So yeah, that's gonna be it from us for the day. And be sure to check out the next video and the next King of the Hill, which is going to be Ekop versus Orange, coming up soon. Thanks a lot.